Good afternoon. Make sure you guys good? Good. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to the presentation of the 2022 Governor's Historic Preservation Awards. I'm Julianne Polanco, and it is my great honor to be your State Historic Preservation Officer. It's wonderful that you're here with us today, both in person and virtually, and we're really pleased to be able to live stream today's event to provide citizens throughout the state and beyond the opportunity to join us in celebration as we honor these amazing achievements in historic preservation. Gratitude to Greg Lucas, the state librarian, for sharing this lovely room with us today. We are in the Stanley Mosque Library and Courts building. It was constructed in 1922 in the classical Greek revival style, designed by Weeks and Day of San Francisco. Decorative elements include the Sierra white granite marble quarried in Madera County and terracotta from Gladney McBean in Lincoln. With the depictions of the history of California on the ceiling, it's a true representation of all of our state, its many attributes, and the lucky place that we get to call home. The ceiling paintings reflect people and events from California history, including the only known seal of the state of California in which the golden bear is eating grapes. In 2013, the building experienced a major rehabilitation, restoring some historic features and artwork throughout. Some you see here and some you see in the hallways as you worked your way up, many of which had been hidden for years by modern intervention. Today, the library stands as a testament to value and the importance of saving our historic resources and this public building for all of us to enjoy. It is my great pleasure now to introduce the Director of California State Parks, Armando Quintero. I always appreciate the Director's time in being with us for this event, his support of historic preservation, and the active role that California State Parks plays in celebrating and commemorating our shared rich history in the stewardship of hundreds of buildings, cultural landscapes, and archaeological sites throughout the state park system. Armando, the floor is yours.
Before I begin, I'd like you to join me in the congratulations and celebration of Julie Polanco's appointment, again, to be the State Historic Preservation Officer for us in California. It really is a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and I'm especially pleased to be here today to recognize the folks who are getting awards for their collaborative efforts by groups, organizations, individuals, and communities. Really, parks and these preserved lands would not be there were it not for the efforts of private citizens and organizations, and it continues in the world of historic preservation. As Julie noted in her remarks, historic preservation is the work and the mission of the Office of Historic Preservation, and it's a key component to California state parks. The state park system is the steward, of 53 historic parks and monuments, 22 cultural preserves, over 13,000 recorded California Native American ancestral and archaeologic sites, over 2,000 historic structures, and more than 5 million artifacts and archival documents, from Indian baskets to historic photographs to antique railroad cars. The archives, which are a McClellan, is really something to see. If any of you ever saw, what's his name, the Indiana Jones, and there's a scene in there where they go into an archive and they flip on a light, and the light pops up for a few rows down, but then it goes off into darkness. That is McClellan. It is really stunning, and I've had the pleasure of being there when we've had tribal leaders arrive who, for the first time, are seeing the materials and the basketry of their ancestors. And I have witnessed extraordinary emotional moments at McClellan. And that's what you do. You preserve that, and it's just so critical. In state parks, we have many initiatives that we're putting in place in order to steward historic and cultural heritage for communities today. And this includes advancing preservation in light of the climate change impacts that we are all witnessing daily. And in fact, with the inundation of the recent series of atmospheric storms. Almost daily, there continue to be events of things like mudslides. I was talking to the superintendent of Big Basin State Park. I asked how he was doing, and he said, pretty good. I said, are things calming down at all, or are you starting to see slumping? And he started telling me about roads and massive trees that are still being weakened by the effects of these storms and deluge. So what we're doing at state parks is we're building capacity to better address fire threats and emergency response and recovery efforts, and I will include in that our efforts around flood threats. Right now, the Tulare Basin in the South San Joaquin Valley is poised to be really an historic set of floods in that area, so keep your eyes on that. There are a number of rivers upstream in Sequoia National Forest and Sequoia National Park, and there's a lot of ag down there, and there's a lot of infrastructure to move water, and there's a lot of people working down there right now to protect communities and farms and basically culture. State Parks has established and continues to expand its emergency collections packing supply caches in a dozen park locations distributed throughout the state park system. During the catastrophic fires of 20 and 21, I was aware of and even heard the exchanges of teams of folks from the collections team, from park rangers and staff out in the field, going to historic buildings that were threatened by fire, and it was really heroic watching them move material into designed crates to in a protected fashion, move those materials to McClellan. And I I got to hear some phone calls that were pretty funny where, there was the chief ranger was driving a moving van full of antiques down Highway 5, and, it's like, didn't think I was going to be doing this. But I have to say that these teams exercise extraordinary efforts in protecting the heritage of California. It's really something. The fire and survey damage assessments resulted in updated documentation of the status of previously listed historic properties, like those of the Santa Cruz Complex fire at Big Basin Redwood State Park. New properties are also identified in the surveys of fire-affected areas where increased visibility has exposed unknown resources. By increased visibility, it means that the surface is burned away and you can now see ancient paths running through a landscape that was really, there's a famous geologist who called Northern California green hell because he could never get down to the rocks. But the fires have exposed cultural sites, mining, evidence of mining, and most importantly, many indigenous archaeologic sites. And so I mentioned a number relative to the number of indigenous archaeologic sites in California. That is a number that's growing as we understand more about the landscape. The Office of Historic Preservation continues its collaboration with UC San Diego, the Department of Anthropology, and the Scripps Institute to create a climate vulnerability site framework which engages tribes and communities to integrate the cultural heritage and stories in with these climate action solutions. That's also something that is really quite emotional to witness and to be a part of. State Parks has begun something called Re-Examining Our Past. And one of the things that we've done is we're looking at place name changes. I have a special assistant in the director's office. His name is Jason McCannell. He's a historian, and he's the former speechwriter for the most recent Governor Jerry Brown. He's really a brilliant guy, and so what he has been doing is inventorying all the place names which have been raised as something that we should be considering, but he's doing the historical research to identify that a name, in fact, was not associated with that person that people thought demanded a place name change. So you may recall that Sumeg up on the north coast in the world of the Yurok was in the news this last fall when we changed the name to Sumeg from Patrick's Point State Park. And that's a really good example of why we need to think about place names. Patrick's Point was named after a settler who was accused of killing some of the Yurok children there. And so the people who live there now, they were descendants of those families living there with the name as a part of their ancestral lands, one of the places where they practice ceremonial gatherings. So That was approved by the State Park and Recreation Commission by unanimous approval in 21. And more recently, State Parks has worked with tribes in submitting replacement names for geographical features with the SQ name, which the Board of Geographic Names was removing across the country. State Parks consulted with tribal nations in California, resulting in 7 replacement names for geographic features in Auburn State Recreation Area and Anza Borrego State Park. We're involved in tribal lands acknowledgement, interpretation, and exhibit development. And that is also something that has been amazing to watch this transformation. Up in the world of the Yurok, at a lagoon called Stone Lagoon, there was a building that State Parks had rented out for just casual use for years. And Stone Lagoon is one of the places where the jump dance ceremonies, which is 3 days of ceremony, begins. And we worked with the Yurok tribe to develop the exhibitry there. And our park professionals worked with them. We got the building completely redone. And as it turned out, when I went up for a few days before the opening, and the first day of opening was only for tribal members, I found out that many tribal members had not gone there, in some cases in their entire lives, because it was not treated as something that was a part of their past. And the other thing that I think is really critical is at State Parks, we only hire Yurok people to work in that visitor center to tell the Yurok stories. The MOUs that we're putting together with indigenous tribes across the state is really quite something, and I think I'm going to mention something about that in a little bit. We are also working with, we got funding to really illuminate and describe the African-American history and engagement in state parks across the state. We got $15 million to work with the California African-American Museum, and we've selected a number of priority parks, and we're going to begin with Black Miners Bar up in Folsom Lake, SRA. And Black Miners Bar is another place where we just had a place name. For many years, since 1961, Black Miners Bar had been called Negro Bar. Prior to 1961, it actually had the N-word bar as the name of that site. So for many people, Negro Bar was really just an extension of the previously used name. And through public participation, it was decided that Black Miners Bar is a name that it is for right now. But one of the ideas about examining our past is we continually develop our understanding of what we should be doing. And so what may happen in 10 years could very well be different than what we did just this last year. And I think that's also the story of what we all are engaged in. A few other parks are Candlestick State Recreation Area, Fort Ord Dunes down in Monterey, Columbia State Historic Park in the foothills, and Colonel Allensworth State Historic Park, just west of Bakersfield, about 40 miles. The Office of Historic Preservation has several multiple property document forms. I'm going to call those MPDFs now. These are documents that provide a historical context for particular themes in the National Register of Historic Places and framework, rather, to help aid in the nomination of properties important to California's rich history. The second part of the Asian Americans and the Asian Pacific Islanders in California and the Native Americans and the California Mission System, a document from the tribal experience, are all nearing completion. The Office of Historic Preservation has also initiated an African Americans in California MPDF study. Really looking forward to that. I was a national park ranger for 22 years, and during that time, one of the places that I managed was Alcatraz. And if any of you have ever been to Alcatraz or go to Alcatraz, what you'll see when you see photographs of inmates, half of them are Black Americans, but you don't hear the story of any one of them. And that is a good example, I think, in that in the backstory to that is most people had to commit really grievous crimes to get onto Alcatraz, and crimes in prison. And my guess is that story may prove a little different for people of color in that prison. So we recognize that preserving our heritage cannot be left to any one state department alone, and often it's too great for it is too great for government agencies, even when they're combined. And I can say that the disasters that we have been experiencing, particularly with these fires, through the we have an emergency meeting every morning for about an hour with all the department heads on what's going on around the state. And I can tell you that the historic preservation is a part of those conversations every time we have those meetings. And that's with CDFW, Fish and Wildlife, CAL FIRE, Office of Emergency Services, Highway Patrol. It's everybody being aware of what we're doing comprehensively in terms of what these emergencies can affect. Preservation's greatest strength and successes come from citizens, as I said earlier, public, private, and of all backgrounds, coming together to protect, sustain, and share California's rich heritage. And it is in the recognition of this strength and spirit that guides our purpose in this presentation of the Governor's Historic Preservation Awards, something that has been done since 1986. And this award is designed to honor the accomplishments of community-based groups and individuals throughout California, each of which has worked to preserve the aspects of the heritage it most values. In the 50-plus years that the National Historic Preservation Act has been in place, we've seen the understanding and mission of preservation broaden to encompass not only the conventional built environment, but also to embrace new methods and approaches that help to connect people to places, landscapes, and stories that make up our collective California heritage. The broader vision of historic preservation is reflected in all of today's awards recipients. And I want to just say another sort of addendum here. State Parks is actively engaged in creating memorandums of understanding with tribes across California. And one of the things that is doing is creating unfettered access to their ceremonial sites that are now in state parks. And as a part of that, I've had the privilege of attending these ceremonies, and I cannot express the power of experiencing literally these living ancient cultures in first person. You know, it is mind-blowing, and I had asked about elements of these events that I knew about, and they said, well, you have to be there, and then we'll answer your question. We will not send you an email. We won't talk about it over the phone, which is a really wonderful cultural attribute, right? And so when I've gone to these ceremonies, I stand there and will ask, when it's appropriate, about different items. And one of the things that I had no idea about, for example, with the Yurok, is the ceremonial regalia that the dancers wear, in some cases, is hundreds of years old and has been passed down through families. And so you're seeing objects that are centuries old. And to see that coming to life along with the expression of culture is something that I'm absolutely thrilled about, both for the privacy of those cultures, but for the awareness of us. You know, it's a real privilege. So today's awardees include folks who are being acknowledged for the development of techniques and materials to stabilize and restore the fragile beauty of stained glass windows, production of a podcast that communicates the enduring value of preservation through the voices and actions of the next generation of heritage conservationists, the rehabilitation of historic buildings for contemporary uses, even as they continue to stand as tangible links to unique and layered pasts. We're appreciative of today's awardees and the countless others for their efforts to ensure that our collective history is celebrated and commemorated. We should not waver in our commitment to honor our ancestors for their work, contributions that are in hopes of their legacy, which will enrich our present, inspire our youth, and in their efforts to not only build a more just world, but I think it is about a reflection of deep time as we look ahead into this deep time that we currently live in. Julie?
And you can see why we are so pleased that Armando is our director and our leader and our inspiration. Thank you for that beautiful talk. Ms. Catherine Toy, Deputy Secretary for Access for the California Natural Resources Agency, could not be with us today. She asked me to extend her congratulations to all of you, and she says, I quote, "You have put communities at the center of telling our collective California story. In doing so, you create a culture in which all Californians can feel seen and valued. I also appreciate the opportunity to provide a particular message of heartfelt congratulations to the Angel Island Immigration Station Hospital Project. Restoring and telling the story of this historic immigration station will forever be close to my heart. Your work helps to turn a history of exclusion into a future of inclusion. Congratulations to the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, Angel Island State Park, and Garavalia Architecture," end quote. I'd also like to extend a sincere thanks to the independent jury who helped us review and select the nominations to present to the governor for final confirmation. They are Janet Hansen, historian with the California Historical Resources Commission, Rich Sucre, Deputy Director, Current Planning Division with the City of San Francisco, and Jack DePue, a now graduated, congratulations, student from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego, and Jack is with us today. Jack, can you give us all a wave? Janet, Rich, and Jack provided thoughtful and informed recommendations that were central to the selections, and we thank them so much for their keen eye and their assistance. I'd also like to recognize our wonderful partners who support the frames and the refreshments that we'll have today. We are nowhere without our collective partnerships with the California Preservation Foundation, Save Our Heritage Organization of San Diego, and the Los Angeles Conservancy. The Office of Historic Preservation has overseen these awards now for 36 years. Since its inception, they are distinguished from other preservation award programs in two important ways. They emphasize active involvement and participation by community groups and recognize a broad array of preservation activities, from the built environment to archaeology, interpretation, and preservation planning. The awards give praise to hundreds of individuals, organizations, and communities, public and private agencies. With this important work, we couldn't be anywhere if we weren't together, and we thank everybody who is not here present as well for the work they do every day. For each award, Deputy SHPO Janon Saunders will give a short presentation about the project. The recipients of the award will then be asked to come up to accept the certificate and have a photo. And then one spokesperson for each group will be given the opportunity to say a few words. And then we'll keep doing this until we are finished. So let's begin. Janon, the floor is yours.
I often say I get the fun stuff for these award ceremonies because I get to talk about your projects. So let me start out by saying, earlier this year, it was reported that for the first time ever, architectural firms build more for restoration and reuse projects than for new construction, which is interesting. And this year's Governor's Historic Preservation Award recipients bear that out, as all but one are rehabilitations of valued historic resources, including, oh, my clicker's not working, including our first award recipient, the Angel Island Immigration Station Hospital. Give you a photo. In the early 1900s, a facility similar in purpose to the U.S. Immigration Station at Ellis Island was built on Angel Island in the San Francisco Bay to enforce exclusionary immigration policies that began with the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. More than 1 million people from 80 different countries, including China, Japan, Russia, India, Germany, Korea, and Mexico, were processed at the Angel Island facility during the period it was open from 1910 to 1940. By the late 1940s, the Angel Island Immigration Station Hospital had been abandoned and fell deeper into disrepair in the ensuing decades. The community-centered and instigated effort to rehabilitate the former hospital building was co-led by the nonprofit Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation and Angel Island State Park. The board and staff of the foundation have included descendants of immigrants who had been detained on Angel Island. Over the past 40 years, the foundation has helped to raise millions of dollars in public and private funding to support restoration and rehabilitation of the site's buildings, as well as develop educational programming. The former hospital, now known as the Angel Island Immigration Museum, contains permanent and changing exhibits, multi-purpose rooms, a catering kitchen, and retail, support service, and staff and volunteer office space. This project brought together the well-executed rehabilitation of a historic resource with strong community support and fundraising to preserve and tell the full story of the Angel Island Immigration Station. It is our pleasure to present the Angel Island Immigration Station Hospital with a 2022 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
This way.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Edward Tephorn. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the executive director for the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, California State Parks' primary nonprofit partner, working to help preserve the buildings at the Angel Island Immigration Station, as well as to uplift its important histories and stories. For those of you who may not be familiar with Angel Island's immigration station, as previously mentioned, it is sometimes referred to as the Ellis Island of the West. But whereas Ellis Island is sometimes a lovely, beautiful reminder of how our country has welcomed immigrants, particularly from Europe to the US, Angel Island serves as a different type of reminder of how, in particular, Asian and Pacific Islander immigrants were treated with injustice and indignity. For Asian and Pacific Islander immigrants who spent time at Angel Island in their attempt to enter the country, they experienced longer periods of detention, more invasive medical exams where they had stripped completely naked and provide blood and stool samples, as well as more intensive interrogations where, for Chinese immigrants in particular, they would be forced to respond to hundreds upon hundreds of questions as they sought to prove that they were worthy, that they were legal to enter the US. What these stories and histories of Angel Island remind us of is that we as a nation and a state of California have a complicated past, and we can't forget that past if we want to change the future. We are so thrilled on behalf of Garavaglia Architecture, California State Parks, and the hundreds of former board, staff, and donors who helped contribute the $15 million it took to preserve and to reimagine this former immigration station. At a time where we've seen increased racism, specifically over 10,000 attacks and acts of hatred against Asian Pacific Islanders in the past 3 years alone, as we've also seen our brothers and sisters and siblings in Black, Indigenous, Latino, Latinx communities continue to experience injustice, and as we've seen increased xenophobia targeted towards immigrants to our state and to our country, the work that we collectively do, along with all of you and other historic sites and historic organizations, is so important, ensuring that we remember history so that regardless of where we were born or how we identify or what language we speak, who we love or who we are loved by, all of our communities deserve the right to be seen, heard, and valued, to be remembered, and to feel safe and welcome in this country. So thank you again to the Office of Historic Preservation for this award, and we look forward to the continued work to ensure that these histories, both the good and the bad, are remembered. Thank you.
Restoration and rehabilitation were the focus of our next award as well, the First Congregational Church of Long Beach. The church has long been an active presence in downtown Long Beach, and the 1914 Italian Romanesque Revival Church building is a Long Beach historical landmark and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Project work included low-pressure steam cleaning of the brick and terracotta masonry to reveal the full range of deterioration problems, needed repairs, and hazardous materials identification and abatement. It was discovered that damaging impacts of long-standing severe seismic and systemic steel corrosion problems had fractured the terracotta tracery of the building's large rose window. Few terracotta rose windows have ever been dismantled, repaired, and restored due to the complexity and fragility of their multi-layered tracery system. The project design team devised a circular structural armature of seismically robust stainless steel for the rose window to emulate the original anchoring system behind the terracotta and firmly attach it to the surrounding brickwork. The cleaned and repaired stained glass was reinstated and the extant mahogany fascia repaired, as well as the decorative plaster frieze. The project had strong community support, with Long Beach Heritage holding open day events for the public to see and learn about the project, and the church sponsoring educational and fundraising events as well to support the preservation effort. The rehabilitation project has ensured the First Congregational Church of Long Beach remains an active and valued landmark in the community for decades to come. We are pleased to award this well-executed project with a 2022 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
Hi, my name is Kara Varnell, and I am a co-chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, and I'm here today with my colleagues, Dorothy King, who is chair of the Historic Preservation Development Committee, and Steve Crow, who's on that committee, but he is also the church treasurer, as well as John Fiddler, who I will speak about in a minute. So we're here today on behalf of a congregation of about 400 people, and we are absolutely honored to be accepting this award. Sorry, I'm reading off my phone, and I'm sorry. I have to make it a little bit bigger. It was harder than I thought. I was prepared for it to be easy, but it's not. Anyway, we are deeply grateful for the State Historic Preservation Office and the Governor for this high honor. And preserving our east facade has been a journey of discovery and learning for the entire congregation. First Congregational Church is the oldest building in downtown Long Beach to still serve the purpose for which it was built. We haven't turned into condos, and we're not a nightclub. And not only that, it's the same congregation, obviously not the same people, but the same congregation with the same shared values, dedicated to serving the greater community. From its inception, it was intended to be more than just a church built for Sunday service. For 110 years, it has provided the public with a beautiful space for concerts, theater, public debates, social justice events, meeting places for the likes of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and things like that. But on its 100th birthday, it was showing some very serious signs of disintegration to its beautiful exterior, most especially to the decorative terracotta elements. especially those columns around the sanctuary windows. Oh, we don't see it over on the, you saw it on the other picture. There were columns, the terracotta columns were beginning to collapse into their bases. It was kind of scary. And we knew that we had to do something soon, but we didn't really know what. I am by profession an art conservator, but I specialize in textiles, not brick and mortar. So we weren't exactly sure where to start. But you have to start. And so actually it started with a pinky swear. There was a 17-year-old mentee I had, young woman who was part of our church, who wanted to be a conservator. And so one summer, we were working together. I was her mentor, and we were working together taking years of duct tape residue off of the brass rail. And we talked about the building and how much we loved the building. And then we made a pinky swear that we were going to save the building. We didn't know how, but we were going to save the building. And that was the beginning of us stumbling around, because I didn't know where to start. I can start with an art project, and I do look at it like a giant piece of art, but I didn't know where to start. So we got bids we connected with some local contractors, and we got bids, and then we did an incredible capital campaign within our very small church community and raised what we thought would be sufficient funds. But we didn't actually have a concise plan to move forward. We didn't really know what we were doing. It wasn't until Allison King, that sweet mentee, who by this point was preparing for graduate school, that she connected with somebody who connected her to somebody who connected us with John Fiddler, who is, I like to say, our preservation guru. Without John, we would still be stumbling. And actually, without John, our building would still be crumbling, but it's not. John patiently worked with us to devise a plan, suggesting we start with the east facade. We were short of funds. Once that was approved, he brought in Gampolini Courtney Masonry Restoration Company out of Emeryville, and they functioned as the general contractors. Rosa Lowinger and her team at RLA Conservation are architectural conservators. Caitlin Driscoll and Bob McKnight from Driscoll Studios were the architects, and then our friends Eric Stovner from Critical Structures. They're a structural engineering company in Long Beach, and we'd worked with them in the past. So they were brought in, and then Mike Oates from J. Michael Designs. There are our stained glass conservators. So they were also involved in the project. And then finally, the incredible people at Darwin Terracotta Limited out of England, who did an amazing job matching the color of our terracotta. I never imagined how challenging that was going to be, but they did it, and it's beautiful. So we worked with these amazing people, and then there was one person in the church who kind of worked with that incredible team of experts, and that was Sam Johnson, and he's a longtime member of the church. So we had this team, we did it, and the results are incredible. And our downtown, as it is renovated and renewed with sparkly glass and steel structures, our beautiful brick and terracotta building stands happily and proudly on the corner of 3rd and Cedar, and it will continue to be the link between Long Beach's past, its present, and its future. It's really beautiful. I welcome you all to come. So from all of us at First Church, we'd just like to thank all the people who reviewed our proposals and chose us for this incredible honor.
Another historic resource held in high esteem by its community is the old Orange County Courthouse in Santa Ana, California. Completed in 1901, the courthouse is the oldest government-built building still in use in Orange County and was home to the county's Superior Court until 1968. Between 1983 and 1992, the courthouse underwent seismic upgrades and a restoration project that restored the building's public spaces to their original 1901 appearance. The building is designated as a California Historical Landmark and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. As the surrounding area developed into a modern civic center complex, the unchanging red Arizona sandstone facade of the courthouse emerged as an iconic Orange County government landmark. However, exposure to the elements for more than a century had begun to take their toll on the facade, and portions of the sandstone surface showed signs of significant erosion and cracking, and in some extreme cases had fallen off the building entirely. The rehabilitation project's goal was to provide needed repairs and maintenance to the historic building in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. Core samplings were taken from the south facade to learn more about the composition and condition of the red sandstone, which is a very challenging material to work with. Repair efforts included securing and patching the sandstone facade and stone window ledges, repairing, resealing, and repainting all the wood windows on 3 floors, and replacing copper roofing and drains at the decorative stone balcony. All work was completed while the building was fully occupied and in use. The courthouse serves as a physical reminder of the county's founding and is much beloved by the community. Many residents have memories of visiting the courthouse to get married or learn about local history. The Old Orange County Courthouse project has ensured this iconic government building will continue to be at the heart of community life and is well deserving of a 2022 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the project manager for this historic courthouse restoration project. We started at
2015.
Actually, 2014 to do the program CEQA documentation. Then 2014, we worked with Page and Turnbull to do the design. And with my funding support from the OC Parks, and it's, we started from south face because that's the face that exposed to the element the most. So we figured out if we learn how to do it right, the rest of the 3 sides will be wonderful done. And that's what we did. We finished 2019, so this is from the beginning to the end. It's a 6 years program. And during COVID-19, so we pushed it through. Everybody loved this project, full-hearted supported, want to get it done. So this is not just the hardware restoration, but also is a software with a team of the funding, CEQA, design, public bidding, then construction, then eventually turn it back to the parks facility for them to use it and maintain it. It's an active use courthouse. People come here to get married and take pictures. So I have my funding representative from Park, Karen, and I'm gonna have John, our technical architect, preservation architect, speak a couple of words.
Sure.
Take a word.
So Wally already mentioned, I think 2 themes of this project are teamwork. It always takes a team to execute these projects. And the other is resilience. So I don't know if you noticed the 1901 picture, but there is a lovely cupola at the top of this building that came down in the Long Beach earthquake in 1933, which our previous award winner, I'm sure is well aware of. And there was a series of seismic retrofits that were done in the 1990s to strengthen this building. And I actually look at our project dealing with the facade as an extension of that, carrying through on making sure that the stone was safe and performing well. And then we also noticed a handful of interesting details that arose out of that, and we worked hard to correct them. And hopefully, continuing on in this courthouse, which is really beloved by the community. So we're very honored to receive this award. It's a great group of awardees, and thank you.
Well, from a historic resource more than a century old, we move forward into the mid-century modern era with our next award, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District Headquarters Building, or what is more commonly known as SMUD Headquarters. Completed in 1960, the SMUD Headquarters Building brought a significant international-style modernist icon to the Sacramento region. Designed by architects Albert M. Dreyfus and Leonard D. Blackford of Dreyfus and Blackford Architects, and landscape architects Ralph Jones and Scott Beamer, the project received national and international attention for its forward-thinking technology that remains relevant today. Although the building's defining features are still remarkably intact, when SMUD had the building evaluated recently, there was a clear need for hazardous materials remediation and detailed cleaning of facade elements to ensure longevity over time. Also addressed were concerns over water intrusion, structural performance in an earthquake, and the need to provide a vibrant workplace for changing generations of staff. Through a collaborative effort and innovative approaches, carefully considered enhancements were chosen to provide value without compromising original design concepts or overall historic integrity. All work was reviewed by several entities to ensure compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. The approach to site improvements emphasized protection of overall landscape patterns as well as the stylistic character of the property. A 3,650 square foot glass mosaic by world-renowned artist Wayne Thiebaud encircles the first level of the south wing. It is the only mural created by Thiebaud and is considered irreplaceable and priceless. The beloved artwork was successfully protected throughout construction and carefully restored as part of the restoration project. For the impressive scope of work that ensured a signature modern resource and its artwork will continue to be a source of community pride and accessible to the public, we are honored to present the Sacramento Municipal Utility District Headquarters project with a 2022 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
So I didn't prepare any remarks, but come on, guys, come back. Come back. So this is an incredibly important project for me. As design director, I'm Chris Barkley, design director and president of Dreyfus and Blackford Architecture here in Sacramento. And my predecessors, Lynn and Al, I call them Lynn and Al, not Albert and Leonard, but they were responsible for this building about the time that I was born. I was born in 1960, and right around when the building was completed. So to be able to come in and reimagine what they created was a really important thing for me. And defining moment in my career, I really feel that's the case. There's a lot of stories we could tell. I could be up here for a really long time. And the folks that are up here on the stage put their heart and soul into it. And it really does take a team that was mentioned earlier today. We have a team of 4 firms that really on the design side and preservation side. We have with Jenny Elsner, who worked with us on the architectural side. But an also really important part of this was the historic landscape. And so we have Page and Turnbull represented and Calendar Landscape Architects. And so actually through multiple contracts, we all work together to a common goal to kind of achieve this really important project. So I really would like to thank the Governor's Office, the state parks, the jury, and really the greater preservation community of Sacramento for all the support that we received over time and for recognizing modernism as an important historic resource. So anyway, thank you very much.
All right. Well, up to now, this year's awards have celebrated the value and benefit of preserving and rehabilitating treasured historic buildings. With our final awardee, Save As Next Gen Heritage Conservation, we take a look forward at one of the innovative approaches, in this case the podcast format, that historic preservation may use to advance its mission and work as we move further into the 21st century. The podcast, Save As Next Gen Heritage Conservation, seeks to build support for heritage conservation by making it accessible, compelling, and relevant, helping residents understand their communities by connecting history with contemporary life, and helping emerging preservationists speak effectively about their work. Through interviews with graduate students and alumni of the University of Southern California, the podcast explores why we save historic places, the connections between social justice and cultural heritage, and other preservation-driven issues. Episodes center around the voices of students and young leaders working in and for their communities. Save As embodies the notion of history as both personal and local, often revealing lesser-known aspects of the state's heritage, such as the Central Valley Armenian community of Yetum, Yuba City's Punjabi heritage, and even the acoustic heritage of Los Angeles' renowned recording studios. It also illustrates the field's integral ties to social justice issues, such as the racing of space, public housing, and preservation's role in urban resilience. Most episodes interview one guest about their master's thesis, but some broaden the lens by focusing on class projects that involve community partnerships. The podcast format allows students to talk about their work in their own words, and in some cases, the words of those that they interview. For its innovative approach to making historic preservation and current scholarship accessible to new audiences, and literally amplifying the voices of emerging leaders in heritage conservation, it is our pleasure to present Save As Next Gen Heritage Conservation with a 2022 Governor's Historic Preservation Award.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the governor. Thank you to the State Office for Historic Preservation. Congratulations, Julie. Thank you to Jinan for your beautiful words. Thank you to Diane for your great communication during the year, and for all of your help. Having been a staffer of an awards show, I get it, and I appreciate it. Thank you to State Parks for your amazing work, amazing. Thank you to the jury. And thank you to these ladies who really got it started. Willa Seidenberg teaches podcasting at Annenberg at USC, and she is a heritage conservation master's student as well. She came into the program. She's like, Trudy, this is Trudy. Oh, I'm Cindy, by the way, Cindy Olnick. Willis Heidenberg, Trudy Sandmeyer. Willis like, Trudy, you know, there's nothing really going on in LA about preservation podcasts. We should do one. And Trudy said, oh, all right. And I don't know how I got involved, but I'm sure glad I did. And we've had a lot of fun. It is a total labor of love. It's a family affair. It has a budget of 0. We get by with family and friends, including Willa's husband, Bill, who took the Manzanar photos, my husband, Tom, who is behind the scenes stealth and watching on the live stream, which is breaking the internet, by the way. Hey, Shiv. And all of the volunteer photographers and interns and PR classes at USC that gave us advice, and just people who just show up and help because they love this show. There would be no podcast without the students, alumni, instructors, community members, whose stories we get to share. We look forward to the day where the field of preservation looks very different, but we're here now, and we're able to share the mic now, so that's what we're doing. I'm basically just parroting Trudy, but she talks about how USC students are, these days, heritage conservation students are less interested in saving ye olde building. Thank God there are people doing that. But the USC students, they study their passions, their identities, and they're interested in what's next. They're interested in how heritage conservation can be more of a community-based effort and really strengthen their communities and work for social justice. And so we need to, as Trudy says, we need to listen to them now because they're next. And we're just so grateful to be able to help get the word out. Speaking of getting the word out, if you haven't listened to Save As, please do, saveas.place or wherever you get your podcast. And please tell a friend. Thanks. Good? All right.
So exciting. I love it. I always say when I'm the youngest person in the world, in the room, something's wrong. And so I'm really excited about the young people who are showing us how to do things differently in ways that are more connected and more meaningful to them. We cannot conclude the day without recognizing the contributions of our staff, a true teamwork effort throughout the year in service to this program. Please join me in thanking Diane Barkley. Diane, could you please stand up? And Janon Saunders. Janon, stay standing when you stand up. Janon has had a long and successful tenure at California State Parks, and we're so lucky she finished off her time with us at OHP. She'll be retiring at the end of May, so this is the last awards that she'll be with us. She's been so invaluable, an asset to not only the Office of Historic Preservation, but somebody with great integrity and a true public servant. We couldn't have been more lucky to work with Janon. We miss her already, but we're so happy for her next adventure. Congratulations, Janon. And a final congratulations to all of you. Your hard work is multiplied by the minutes that you were with us today to share your stories and inspire all of us to continue to do this work together. This concludes our program. Please feel free to stay, mingle, and enjoy the lovely refreshments. And we'll see you next year. Thank you.